Hey everyone, Sam here, otherwise known as FPL Pricey, and in today's video, I will be running through my transfer plans ahead of Game Week 17. Welcome back everyone to another video. Now, ahead of Game Week 17, I've got 4 free transfers to use and 0.7 million in the bank. Before we get going with my transfer plans ahead of Game Week 17, let's take a quick look back at Game Week 16. And of course, if you did enjoy today's video, I would massively appreciate it if you could leave a like and importantly, hit subscribe to the channel. Let's take a look back now at Game Week 16. It ended up as another green arrow. I think that's 6 in the last 7 game weeks now. So I'm on a bit of a run, up to 270k from, I think it was 320k going into Game Week 16. And I used 2 of my 5 free transfers after the AFCON reload to bring in a fit keeper instead of Nick Pope, who's been out for a little while. I brought in Kelleher for 4.5 million. He obviously lost the clean sheet in the last few minutes of the match, which was incredibly frustrating. And I brought in O'Reilly for Senesi, who was a doubt going into Game Week 16. Obviously, he played, but conceded 4 goals. So I'm pretty happy with that move as well, considering that O'Reilly, of course, got the clean sheet. He would have also picked up the assist if Savinho had buried the chance at the end, rather than trying to round the keeper, obviously winning the penalty, and Haaland put it in the back of the net, which was doubly annoying for me, because not only did it mean O'Reilly didn't get an assist, but it also meant that Haaland got his second goal and maximum bonus points, and I didn't captain him. I went with Bukayo Saka. He picked up 2 assists, which honestly, I was very happy with. 11 points from him, doubled to 22. I would have absolutely taken that at the start of the game week. It wasn't Arsenal's best performance, but for Saka to come out with 2... Well, I think one's fair enough. One was maybe a little bit fortuitous, but I think all things being considered, it's fair enough that he got both assists. And of course, 11 points from him, I'm more than happy with. Although, having seen Haaland on the Sunday picking up 2 goals, I do have slight regrets not going with Haaland anyway, and going into Game Week 17, I don't have many doubts about where my armband is going to be placed. I did actually have 4 double-digit returns in my squad this week. Saka and Haaland, as already mentioned. Fernandes and Foden both picking up double-digit hauls. Of course, they did so last week. That's 4 in a row now for Foden, with just 1 attacking return in this one, but also hitting DEFCON right at the end. So 11 points from him, although it must be said, it wasn't quite as effective for my rank as it used to be, given that he was up at about 70% effective ownership this week, and that's only going to rise as well. So sadly, I think the days of getting any benefit out of his points are probably in our rearview mirror. Fernandes, however, was at about 50% effective ownership at my rank, so him getting 13 points was greatly received, although in that match, the more effective player to get me points would have been Brian Mbeumo, who I did have doubts as to whether or not he'd play in that match. Obviously, Man United keeping their cards fairly close to their chest ahead of releasing him to the African Cup of Nations. He did play, got about 0.9 XGI and blanked. So a little bit frustrating. I was pondering whether or not to bring in Semenyo ahead of the deadline, given that there was a slight doubt about Mbeumo's minutes, but I didn't make that move. And of course, Semenyo did get a goal. So a little bit regretful of not making that one. But I think given the data and given how the match went, if I'd known the match was going to go in that way and I'd known Mbeumo was going to play, I would have assumed he'd get something out of it. So I don't have many regrets about that one. Elsewhere, it was blanks from Timber as Arsenal defence. I think that's 5 in the last 6 they've conceded a goal in, but they are getting defenders back. Anderson has been a little bit frustrating. He might be a player I'm looking at moving on soon, although they do have good fixtures to come. That is the Fulham Anderson, by the way, not the Nottingham Forest Anderson, who didn't get DEFCON. And I think when you've got a player like Harry Wilson, who gets 16 points at around the same price, it does put into perspective Anderson as a player, because he's never going to be that guy who's getting the double-digit haul. He's going to tick along nicely. Most weeks, or more often than not, he'll pick up DEFCON. This week he didn't. And of course, a pretty popular player at around his price point did go and haul. So it does, again, give me slight regrets and makes me look elsewhere as to where I can maybe find those big double-digit hauls from, but that's not going to happen every single week, and Anderson will tick along nicely, so he's never a terrible player to own. Thiago blanking with no shots on goal against Leeds was a little bit annoying, especially considering I also had the Kelleher clean sheet wipeout in that match. It was not a fun watch for me whatsoever. Nearly got a penalty, but of course Altara was offside. Little bit frustrating from him. I can see why some managers are getting a little bit twitchy on whether or not to include him in their sides moving forwards. But with Wolves next up, he's probably not going anywhere for me just yet. Okay, so moving into game week 17 with 4 free transfers, 0.7 million in the bank. I think my team looks pretty well set up with one glaring omission. Of course, that is Brian Mbeumo. We will be talking about the options to replace him in just a moment's time. Elsewhere, I've shifted to a 4-4-2 for this week. I do have enough of a deep defence to go with a 4-4-2. Arguably, even Rodon on my bench against Crystal Palace at home might not be the worst player to be starting this week. So I've got plenty of bench cover. I've also got Nottingham Forest's Anderson away at Fulham on my bench. I'd be surprised if he didn't hit DEFCON in this one. So again, not a bad player to come off my bench if needed. And maybe there's even an argument to start him ahead of someone like Lacroix, given that Palace only have a 2-day turnaround from their European game on the Thursday to their game against Leeds on the Saturday. So if Lacroix plays that one, I'm going to have some serious doubts about his minutes, but I would imagine he gets rested. I think Glasner's come out and said he's basically going to rotate the full 11. So we'll wait and see on that one. But I think as long as Lacroix didn't play in that game, Leeds away from home is all right. And I think I probably favour playing him over Anderson. That is, again, the Nottingham Forest Anderson. Of course, I am currently playing the Fulham Anderson against Nottingham Forest at home. Elsewhere, Kelleher in goal away against Wolves. They've got a pretty poor away record. So I'm less confident on this than I'd like to be, considering it's a pretty good matchup and one of the better ones that Brentford will have. And between you and me, I'm already a little bit regretting the fact that I went with Kelleher. Obviously, this would be a completely different scenario if he did manage to keep Leeds at bay in game week 16, and I'd be much more confident. But I've just got a gut feeling that Brentford aren't a team capable of keeping that many clean sheets. So look, I'm not looking at moving him on anytime soon. They've got good fixtures to come. I will ride it out. But I do wonder if in a few game weeks this is going to look like a mistake. Obviously, it does also allow me funds to make good moves elsewhere. So it's not just about Kelleher on his own, but I do just wonder if for a little bit more money, I could have gone with someone like Sanchez. And again, Chelsea are keeping plenty of clean sheets. So maybe one to look at in the future. But for now, against Wolves, I'm going to hold on to him. Similar situation with Thiago up top, even though he had a quiet game against Leeds. Because it's Wolves, I'm going to hold on to him for now. There are good strikers who are putting their hands up at the moment, though, with good fixtures coming. So Ekitike might be on the radar if it looks like the minutes are safe. And Bowen from next week onwards might also be a player I'm interested in. For now, though, I think Thiago probably stays. The armband, of course, is on Haaland at home to West Ham. I've got triple Man City. I think all of them start, given that Pep doesn't like to rotate at the moment anyway. O'Reilly, Foden and Haaland. Could not be happier with that combination, so fingers crossed for points there. I currently do have double Man United midfield. I might stick with double Man United midfield, or I might look elsewhere for that Mbeumo replacement. Of course, I wouldn't have Mbeumo if I did stick with the double. It would be looking at a different midfielder. And then I've also got Bukayo Saka alongside Bruno Fernandes. Very happy with both of those players right now. I think given that Arsenal are really in a bit of a dogfight for the title race right now, Saka's minutes should be looking pretty good. So against Everton, away from home, Everton without many of their best attackers, Dewsbury Hall's a doubt and dies off at AFCON. Grealish might be a doubt as well. I think that the clean sheet odds are looking pretty good for Arsenal there as well. So Timber in my back line, also feeling pretty confident on that one. So I think I've gone through most of the players I'm happy with. Let's talk about my Mbeumo replacement, and then I am tempted to maybe look at using the funds that I have from downgrading Mbeumo to maybe maximize my squad elsewhere. Okay, so taking a deeper look at my preferred Mbeumo replacements, I think I've narrowed it down to 3 favored options. 2 of them are a little bit more expensive in Semenyo and Cunha. One of them is quite a lot cheaper, and it would allow me the funds to make upgrades elsewhere. So Wilson is also very much in my thinking. Let's start off with Semenyo, who has a great fixture, probably the best of the lot in game week 17, Burnley at home, and it is something that I want to attack. I want some Bournemouth coverage in that game, and although Semenyo hasn't returned very often recently, I think he's been a little bit unfortunate not to get a couple more attacking returns. The data hasn't been bad. He's also been unfortunate with a couple of offside decisions. Obviously, they were offside, but he did nothing wrong. It was Evan Nilsson in most cases that had the goal ruled out or had the assist ruled out. So I think Semenyo is a player that I'm still very keen on. A couple of weeks ago, when I first brought in Mbermo, I think in my videos I also mentioned that the likely route that I was looking at was Mbermo out in game week 17 for Semenyo, and that is very much still on the cards. Semenyo would be a short-term punt, mainly because of the fixtures. Of course, Burnley and Brentford are absolutely fine, but then after that, Chelsea followed by Arsenal. I'd probably want rid of him by then, but also because he's on 4 yellow cards now. Now, arguably, he should have been sent off last night. I will leave that down to you to decide. It's not that type of show, but either way, he's on 4 yellow cards. He's got a few games to go before he reaches the threshold of matches where it resets, and obviously he's not at risk of suspension. So I'm more than happy to punt on him for 1 game week for that Burnley fixture, and then maybe even move him on in game week 18 ahead of Brentford. But I could also leave him in for an extra game week if he doesn't pick up the suspension. I'm not too worried about Brentford as a fixture either. However, it does mean that I'm using 1 free transfer this week for him and then another one committed in the future to get rid of him as well, because I probably don't want him long term. So it's a move that I'm still keen on, but I need to figure out whether there are better ways to use that extra free transfer elsewhere in the future, because that could be powerful for me. That extra 1 free transfer could have higher upside elsewhere. Now, removing the need for a future free transfer would be if I went with the Cunha option, because although the next 2 fixtures don't look great, Aston Villa away, Newcastle at home, longer term, I think he's a better hold than Semenyo. Now, the data has actually crept slightly ahead of Semenyo in the last couple of game weeks. Cunha has, I think, only picked up 2 goals, 1 assist so far this season, so the actual output has been pretty poor. But the data, especially recently in the last couple of game weeks, has really started to look a lot more convincing. And now that Mbermo's gone, I think Cunha's going to have to take another step up. He obviously got his goal last night against Bournemouth. I've been impressed with him, at least eye test wise, even aside from the data in the last couple of game weeks. And I do just wonder whether it's worth saving that extra free transfer, because it's quite likely that if I went with Semenyo in a couple of game weeks, I'd just shift it over to Cunha anyway. And I wonder if it's just worth saving the free transfer, getting in Cunha a couple of weeks early, maybe avoiding that Burnley fixture for Semenyo, which obviously I would love to attack, but it saves that extra free transfer. And I wonder if that's the play here. However, I think given the fact that it's Aston Villa who have been really good recently, Newcastle, both of which are not bad defences, before we get to Wolves and Leeds, which is when I'd really want him anyway, I think Semenyo first, even if it is for a week or two, might make more sense. So out of those 2, I think I'm slightly leaning towards Semenyo. Now, the final option is to go with Harry Wilson, who has been in phenomenal form recently. And although the data is not quite as good as Cunha's or Semenyo's, he's a lot cheaper, and it would allow moves elsewhere. And also, with the next 2 fixtures to come, arguably it can continue. Nottingham Forest and West Ham would not be scared of those 2 as fixtures. It must be said, though, that the best fixture of the lot was Burnley. That's when he got his big haul. And I wonder if getting him in now is a little bit after the train has left the station. I'm not sure it is. I still think there are more returns to come. But after the next 2 game weeks, Crystal Palace away, Liverpool at home, I wonder if I'll be looking at my team and thinking, why do I have Wilson and Elliot Anderson when I could have a stronger 4th midfielder than Wilson there? Or maybe Wilson carries on, he looks good, and I just get rid of Elliot Anderson and I upgrade him later on. So he's in my thinking, and it also allows some pretty decent upgrades elsewhere. So it's not one that I'm ruling out. So with those different moves in mind, let's take a look at a few of the different combinations that I could look at using with more than 1 free transfer this week. Okay, so let's do some planning with more than 1 free transfer using the brilliant FPL.team. Do make sure you go check that out. Fantastic free tool, and you can map out for weeks ahead. I would highly recommend it. Not sponsored, just really like it. So first and foremost, I think my gut instinct is to go ahead with the Mbermo to Semenyo move. So that would give me 1.4 million in the bank, which is pretty hefty, especially considering I've still got another 3 free transfers to use if I wanted to do so. Now, if I did bring in Semenyo, it would be a short-term thing. So I don't want to use all of my free transfers because I probably want some spare to make some moves in future weeks, especially considering there are good fixture swings coming for the likes of Everton. Liverpool still look really good for fixtures, and Chelsea come around game week 22 as well. So I want some free transfers left over. Semenyo first up, that's fantastic. And then 1.4 million in the bank. does make it a little bit tempting to do something that you probably will scoff at, but Anderson I'm getting pretty sick of, honestly. The next two fixtures are good, but I don't know how much I trust Fulham to keep a clean sheet in either of those. Nottingham Forest and West Ham, followed by, after that, away game against Crystal Palace, not easy. Liverpool at home, never going to keep a clean sheet there, you would think. Chelsea at home, same problem. Leeds away, Brighton at home, Man United away. And then by the time we get to game week 25, when arguably the next half-decent fixture is, we're looking at potentially wildcarding around about then or soon enough then anyway. So I am wondering if Anderson is a player I can look to get rid of. And if I did, again, you're probably going to scoff, but Virgil van Dijk is someone that I still haven't quite given up on yet. I haven't had him all season, but he's decent on the DEFCON. Liverpool are starting to look a little bit more solid defensively. And the fixtures, especially over the next 6, look pretty incredible. Now, Arsenal aside, I'd definitely look at benching him in that week. But aside from that, first up, away at Spurs, not a bad fixture whatsoever. Spurs have really struggled at home and are struggling generally right now, followed by 2 great home fixtures against Wolves and Leeds. Now, yes, Leeds scored 3 goals at home at Elland Road against Liverpool, but when Liverpool are at home at Anfield, I wonder if that's going to be a slightly different situation. Fulham away from home, not bad. Probably one of the more difficult ones in this run. And then game week 22 is against Burnley at home as well. So I still have a gut feeling that he's worthwhile having in FPL at the moment. And I think he's probably a much better own than Anderson is across this period. It also gives me a bit of a placeholder for someone like Gabriel when he's back fit again, because I can get much closer with Virgil van Dijk than I can with Anderson, for instance, or Daniel Munoz when he comes back as well. Maybe even someone like Tarkowski if it looks really likely that we're going to want Everton defence or Chelsea defence come game week 22 with the likes of Chalobah. So I think I like him as a bit of a price point placeholder, but also in the short term, I think the fixtures are good enough to still want him. Again, I can already see the comments saying just don't trust the Liverpool defence. I do understand that, but I do just wonder if this combination is worth it. Anyway, let's go back a step, because if I didn't make the Semenyo move and went down to someone like Wilson, it does give me 3.4 million in the bank to make some pretty significant upgrades. Now, Van Dijk could absolutely be one of those, so I'll put him in for now anyway. And then, of course, it would be a 4-4-2 still. But then the next game week, I'd still have 3 free transfers to make some even bigger upgrades if I wanted to. Wilson's still got a good game, but Thiago, if I was sick of him, I've then got 8.8 million to even get up to the likes of Ekitike if I wanted to for Wolves at home. And that could be my 1 free transfer that week. Elsewhere, my team looks pretty solid. I could arguably look at an Everton defender this game week, but realistically, who are you benching here? Brighton at home for Timber, Wolves at home for Virgil van Dijk, Spurs at home for Lacroix doesn't even look that bad, Nottingham Forest away for O'Reilly. I might not even need Everton defence at this point, even though they've got Burnley that week. So I could arguably take it all the way down to Wilson and make 2 pretty decent upgrades elsewhere over the next couple of game weeks. So that's definitely on my radar. I think right now, at time of recording, the most tempting thing for me is to just simplify it, make the Semenyo move. Obviously, I'll wait for later on in the week and make sure that everyone else is fit. And if that's the case, I will have a serious think about maybe upgrading either Lacroix, if he plays on the Thursday evening, or Anderson, more likely, to Virgil van Dijk. Let me know what you think of that in the comments below. I imagine most people are not too hot on Van Dijk, but I really like the fixtures to come. And if we quickly go over to the FPL website, I just want to double check. What are Liverpool's defensive data? What has it been like recently? So we're looking at, where are we looking? There we go. So 1.23 XGC per 90. Not all that bad. And actually 2 clean sheets in their last 4 game weeks as well. Again, not awful. Even in the Sunderland game, only conceded 0.41 XG. Obviously conceded in that game, but arguably were a little bit unfortunate not to keep a clean sheet there. So, look, I don't love it. I don't think he's a must-own by any means, but If I've got the money spare, do I prefer him over Anderson? Yeah, probably. And it is a nice placeholder moving forwards. Anyway, let me know what you think of the moves. I think Semenyo in is the most likely move, and then probably moving him on for Cunha in a couple of game weeks' time when we get to Man United's plum fixtures in game week. Is it 19 and 20, and then Burnley away from home after that as well. And then I can double up with Cunha at that point after Semenyo has had his good couple of fixtures here. If he gets suspended ahead of Brentford, I can move Cunha in at that point instead. That's absolutely fine. Anyway, let me know what you think of the moves. Hopefully you've enjoyed the video. And if you did, I'd really appreciate a like and subscribe to the channel. And I'll see you back in a couple of days as we lock in my team ahead of Game Week 17.